Now starting another original tale from Korafika Tales, an exclusive work from our publishing house, narrated by Joanne. Enjoy the story. She walked into the room carrying his sons. He didn't know it yet. None of them did. They only saw a ghost returning from 6 months of silence, a woman they thought he'd broken. But beneath the black dress that draped her body like armor, 3 hearts were beating. His hearts. His blood. The proof he said she could never give him. He was holding another woman's hand when she appeared. His new wife. Younger. Fertile. Perfect. The room froze. He went pale, and she smiled. Because tonight, in front of every powerful man who ever doubted her, she would destroy the lie he built his empire on. Tonight she would show him what happens when you abandon a queen. And she comes back a mother. The truth was about to shatter everything. The oak room smelled like old money and older sins. Cigar smoke curled beneath crystal chandeliers, mingling with the low hum of men who believed they owned the world. At the center of it all sat Minjae Park, 32 years old, untouchable, and dressed in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. His hand rested on the lower back of a woman who wasn't supposed to exist. His wife. New. Young. Radiant. She was everything the last one wasn't. Minjae had made sure of that. He leaned into her ear, whispering something that made her giggle, a sound designed to carry across the room. His eyes swept over the table of assembled crime lords, associates, and silent enforcers. They were watching. Good. That was the point. This meeting wasn't just about territory or alliances. It was about rewriting history. 6 months ago, Minjae Park had been engaged to a woman the underworld whispered about in tones of pity. Beautiful, intelligent, strong, but broken. After 3 years together, she hadn't given him children. And in his world, a woman who couldn't carry an heir was a liability, so he'd ended it, publicly, coldly, in front of the same men who sat around this table tonight. He told them the problem was hers, her body, her failure. And now, with a 26-year-old wife at his side, glowing, fertile, already 2 months pregnant, he was proving it. "Gentlemen," Minjae said, his voice cutting through the room like steel wrapped in silk. "Let's begin." The doors at the far end of the oak room opened. She walked in alone. No guards, no announcement. Just the soft click of heels against marble and the kind of silence that follows a grenade before it detonates. Minjae's heart stopped. Amara, 30 years old. Dark skin gleaming beneath the low light. Hair twisted into a crown of locks that framed a face he'd spent 6 months trying to forget. She wore black, a dress that clung to her body in ways that made every man in the room sit straighter. But it wasn't the dress that made the air leave his lungs. It was her belly. Round. Full. Unmistakable. Pregnant. Very pregnant. Minjae's hand tightened on his wife's shoulder. Around the table, conversations died. Eyes moved between him and the woman who'd just walked into his carefully constructed new life like a ghost made flesh. Amara's gaze swept the room. It landed on him last. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised ruin. "Apologies for being late," she said, her voice low and smooth, carrying the faint melody of a woman who'd been born in Accra and raised in Brooklyn. "I had personal matters to attend to." Her hand moved to her belly. The gesture was slow, deliberate, protective. Minjae felt the ground beneath him crack. No, it wasn't possible. She'd been barren. The doctors had said so. 3 years of trying, of treatments, of hope turning into silence. She was the reason. She had to be. Because if she wasn't, Minjae, one of the older bosses said quietly, his voice laced with amusement and something sharper. "Aren't you going to introduce us to your guest?" Minjae didn't move. His wife's hand slipped into his, squeezing gently, seeking reassurance. But he couldn't give it. Not while Amara stood there, radiant and impossible, carrying the one thing he'd told the world she couldn't create. "There's no need for introductions," Amara said smoothly. She pulled out a chair at the far end of the table and sat down with the grace of a woman who knew exactly what kind of bomb she'd just dropped. "Most of you already know me, and the ones who don't. Well, they will soon enough." Her eyes locked onto Minjae's. "I'm carrying his children." The room went silent. Not just quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that swallows sound and spits out consequences. Minjae's wife turned to look at him, her face pale, her hand trembling in his. But he couldn't look at her. He couldn't look away from Amara, from the curve of her belly, from the calm, terrifying certainty in her eyes. "That's impossible," he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "You couldn't—" "I couldn't what?" Amara interrupted, tilting her head. Her smile widened. "Conceive. Carry a child. Funny. That's what you told everyone, wasn't it? That I was the problem. That my body was. Broken." She leaned back in her chair, one hand resting on her belly, the other draped lazily over the armrest. "I'm 6 months pregnant, Minjae. With triplets. 3 boys. All yours." The words hit him like bullets. Triplets. His. Around the table, men exchanged glances. Some smirked. Others looked away. His wife's hand slipped out of his. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor, and walked out of the room without a word. No one stopped her. Minjae's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists beneath the table. "You disappeared 6 months ago." "I did. You let me think that I was barren?" Amara's voice was soft, almost gentle. "Yes, I did. Because that's what you told the world. And I wanted to see what you'd do with that lie." She gestured around the room. "Looks like you built quite a life on it." Minjae's throat burned. Rage, shame, confusion, all of it churning inside him like acid. "Why now?" he demanded. "Why come back now?" Amara stood, slowly, carefully. Her dress shifted with the movement, revealing the full weight of what she carried. 3 lives, 3 heartbeats, 3 futures. "Because," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving his, "I wanted you to see what you threw away. I wanted you to feel what I felt when you stood in front of these men and told them I wasn't enough." She walked toward the door, every step deliberate, every movement a statement. "And I wanted you to know," she added, pausing at the threshold, "that I didn't hide this pregnancy because I was ashamed. I hid it because I was waiting for the perfect moment to destroy you." She smiled again. "Congratulations, Minjae. You're going to be a father. 3 times over." And then she was gone. The door closed behind her. The room erupted in whispers. Minjae sat frozen, his world collapsing around him, the taste of his own lies choking him from the inside out. Minjae didn't follow her. He sat in that chair, surrounded by the ghosts of his own arrogance, while the men around him pretended to return to business. But no one was talking about territories anymore. No one cared about alliances. They were all thinking the same thing. He'd lied, and she'd proven it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, twice, a dozen times. He didn't look. He didn't move. He just stared at the door Amara had walked through, her words echoing in his skull like a curse he couldn't exorcise. "I'm carrying his children. 3 boys. All yours." It wasn't possible. It shouldn't be possible. But he'd seen her. The way her body had changed. The glow in her skin. The curve of her belly, undeniable and devastating. And the worst part, the part that made his chest tighten until he couldn't breathe, was that he knew it was true. Because he remembered. 6 months ago. The night before he'd ended their engagement. They'd been together. One last time. Desperate. Raw. The kind of connection that felt like both goodbye and forever. And then, the next morning, he'd walked into a room full of men just like these and told them she wasn't enough. that her body had failed him, that he was moving on. He'd believed it. God help him, he'd believed it. The doctors had said it. The treatments had failed. 3 years of trying, of hoping, of watching her retreat into herself every time another month passed with nothing. He'd convinced himself it was her fault, that he deserved better, that he needed a woman who could give him heirs. And now, she was carrying 3. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. It was his wife. "I'm going home. Don't follow me." Min-jae closed his eyes. He'd married her 2 months ago in a quiet ceremony that felt more like a business transaction than a union. She was sweet, obedient, everything Amara wasn't. And when she'd told him she was pregnant just last week, he'd felt vindicated, proof that the problem had never been his. But now that proof felt like ash in his mouth. He pushed back from the table and stood. The room went quiet again. Every eye on him, waiting, judging. "Meeting adjourned," he said flatly. No one argued. He walked out of the oak room with the weight of their stares on his back, his guards falling into step behind him like shadows. The hallway outside was cold, sterile, the kind of space designed to strip away emotion and leave only function. But emotion was all he had left. "Find her," he told the man on his right, SEO, his head of security. "Bring her to me." SEO hesitated. "Sir, your wife—" "I don't care about my wife right now," Min-jae snapped. "Find Amara, tonight." SEO nodded and disappeared down the hall. Min-jae stood alone in the silence, his fists clenched, his mind racing. He needed answers. He needed to know why she'd hidden this, why she'd let him build a life on a lie, why she'd waited 6 months to reappear and tear everything apart. But beneath all the questions, beneath the anger and the confusion, was something else. Fear. Not of her. Of himself. Because the moment he'd seen her, pregnant, glowing, untouchable, something inside him had shifted. The part of him that had spent 6 months convincing himself he'd made the right choice had cracked wide open. And what spilled out wasn't relief or vindication. It was longing. Amara didn't go far. She knew he'd come looking. Men like Min-jae always did. They couldn't stand not having control, not knowing. So she waited in the one place she knew he wouldn't expect. The rooftop garden of his building. It had been hers once. A space she'd claimed when they were together, filling it with plants and soft lights and the kind of peace that didn't exist anywhere else in his world. She'd spent hours up here, reading, thinking, grieving the children she thought she'd never have. Now, she stood among the overgrown vines and unopened blossoms, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the railing as she stared out at the city below. She'd planned this moment for 6 months, every word, every gesture, every second of his shock and humiliation, and it had felt empty. She'd expected triumph, vindication, the sweet taste of revenge. But all she felt was tired. And beneath the exhaustion, something softer, something dangerous. Regret. Not for what she'd done, but for what she'd lost. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Min-jae stood at the entrance to the garden, his suit jacket gone, his tie loosened, his face shadowed by the glow of the city lights. He looked like a man who'd aged a decade in the span of an hour. "You knew I'd come," he said quietly. "I did." He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like she was something fragile that might shatter if he moved too fast. "Why here?" Amara looked around the garden. "Because it's the only place in your empire that ever felt like mine." Min-jae stopped a few feet away. His eyes moved to her belly, lingered. She saw the war playing out on his face. Anger, disbelief, something that looked almost like wonder. "Are they really mine?" he asked. The question hung in the air like a blade. Amara's laugh was soft, bitter. "You really have to ask? You disappeared. For 6 months. No word. No trace. And now you show up pregnant, claiming..." Claiming? Her voice sharpened. I'm not claiming anything, Min-jae. I know who the father is. The question is, do you? His jaw tightened. The night before you ended our engagement, she continued, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. Do you remember? He didn't answer, but the shift in his expression told her everything. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later, Amara said. 3 heartbeats. 3 little lives growing inside the body you told the world was broken. She took a step toward him. I could have come to you. I could have told you. But I didn't. Because I wanted to see what kind of man you really were. And you showed me. Amara, you married someone else, she said, her voice breaking just enough to reveal the wound beneath the armor. You paraded her around like a trophy. You stood in front of those men and made me the villain of your story. You left. Min-jae shot back, his voice rising. You walked away without a word. What was I supposed to do? Wait forever? You were supposed to love me, Amara whispered. The words landed like a punch. Min-jae's breath hitched. He looked away, his hands curling into fists at his sides. I did, he said quietly. God help me, I did. Past tense.
You have 2 options. Keep watching short clips. Unlock the full story now. 14 full episodes. New content every week. Listen anytime, anywhere, no interruptions. Exclusive members-only area. Choose the story theme once a week. Scan the QR code now. Access is closing.
He didn't correct her. Amara turned back to the city. The lights blurred through the tears she refused to let fall. They're moving, she said after a long silence. The babies. I can feel them. Min-jae's gaze dropped to her belly again. This time, he didn't look away. Can I? He gestured vaguely, his voice uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. Amara's heart clenched. She should say no. She should walk away. Leave him standing here with the weight of his choices and nothing else. But she nodded. Min-jae closed the distance between them. His hand hovered over her belly, trembling, waiting for permission. Amara took his wrist and guided it to the curve where 3 lives were growing, small, fragile, and completely unaware of the war being waged around them. For a moment, neither of them moved. And then, a kick. Small, subtle, but unmistakable. Min-jae's breath caught. His eyes widened. His hand pressed more firmly against her, chasing the movement, desperate to feel it again. Another kick. Then another. 3 of them, Amara said softly. Fighting for space already. Min-jae's eyes lifted to hers, and for the first time in 6 months she saw the man she'd once loved staring back at her. Broken. Lost. Searching for something he didn't know how to name. I'm sorry, he whispered. Amara pulled his hand away. Stepped back. Put the distance between them that should have always been there. Sorry doesn't change anything, she said. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. She walked past him toward the exit. Amara. She stopped but didn't turn around. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice raw. Amara looked back over her shoulder. Her eyes met his one last time. Nothing, she said. Not anymore. And then she left him standing alone in the garden, surrounded by ghosts and the echoes of 3 heartbeats he'd never know he was losing until it was already gone. Min-jae didn't go home that night. He couldn't face the woman he'd married, the one who'd built her entire existence on the promise that she was everything Amara wasn't. How could he look her in the eye, knowing that promise was a lie? That the empire he'd built, the narrative he'd constructed, the life he'd fought to create, all of it was crumbling because of 3 heartbeats he'd felt beneath his palm. Instead, he sat in his office on the 42nd floor, staring at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline stretched before him like a kingdom he no longer recognized. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. His phone buzzed. Another message from his wife. He didn't read it. Another from Seo, confirming Amara's location. He didn't respond. He just sat there, trapped in the space between who he'd been and who he was becoming, with no idea how to reconcile the two. The door to his office opened without a knock. SEO stepped inside, his expression carefully neutral. "She's staying at the Peninsula, Suite 804. Security confirmed she checked in alone." Min-jae nodded but said nothing. CEO hesitated. "Sir, your wife called. Multiple times. She wants to know when you're coming home. Tell her I'm working." "She's pregnant, sir. I know what she is," Min-jae snapped, his voice cutting through the room like glass. "And I know what Amara is. 3 children, CEO. 3. All mine. Do you understand what that means?" CEO's jaw tightened. "It means you have a choice to make." "A choice." Min-jae's laugh was bitter. "What choice? I'm married. I have a wife who's carrying my child. And somewhere across this city is a woman I destroyed, carrying 3 more." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His reflection stared back at him, haggard, hollow-eyed, barely recognizable. "She planned this," he said quietly. "She hid the pregnancy. Let me build a new life. Waited for the perfect moment to destroy me in front of everyone." "And?" SEO asked. "What are you going to do about it?" Min-jae pressed his palm against the glass. The cold seeped through, grounding him. "I don't know. But that was a lie." He knew exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to her, to demand answers, to beg forgiveness, to hold her again and feel those 3 heartbeats against his skin and pretend that the last 6 months had never happened. But wanting something and being able to have it were 2 very different things. "Find out everything," Min-jae said finally. "Where she's been, how she's been living, who's been helping her. I want to know every move she's made since she disappeared." CEO nodded and left. Min-jae stood alone in the silence, his empire sprawling beneath him. And for the first time in his life, it felt like a cage. Amara didn't sleep that night either. She lay in the oversized bed of her hotel suite, one hand on her belly, staring at the ceiling as her sons kicked and shifted inside her. They were restless, active, like they could feel the storm brewing around them. She'd done what she came to do. She'd walked into Min-jae's carefully constructed world and detonated the truth like a bomb. She'd seen the shock in his eyes, the devastation, the realization that everything he'd built was founded on a lie. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like drowning. Because when he'd touched her belly, when his hand had pressed against her skin, and his eyes had filled with something that looked like wonder, she'd felt it too. The pull, the connection, the impossible, irrational, infuriating truth that no matter how much she wanted to hate him, some part of her still remembered what it felt like to love him. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up, expecting another message from her lawyer or her sister. But the name on the screen made her breath catch. Min-jae. The message was simple. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Noon. The place we used to go." Amara stared at the words for a long time. She should ignore it, block his number, disappear again and raise her sons alone, far away from the man who'd broken her. But even as the thought crossed her mind, her fingers were already typing a response. One conversation. That's all you get. She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she set the phone down, closed her eyes, and tried to convince herself that tomorrow wouldn't change anything. The place they used to go was a small cafe in Brooklyn, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. It was the kind of spot that didn't belong in Min-jae's world. No power players, no deals, no guards stationed at every corner. Just coffee, quiet, and a window that looked out onto a street where normal people lived normal lives. They'd gone there during the early days of their relationship, when Amara was still teaching him how to exist outside the empire he'd been born into. She'd order tea. He'd order black coffee. And they'd sit for hours, talking about everything and nothing, pretending that the weight of his name didn't follow him everywhere. It had been their sanctuary. Amara arrived first. She wore a loose cream sweater that draped over her belly, dark jeans and boots that made her feel more grounded than the heels she'd worn the night before. Her locks were pulled back in a simple bun. No armor today, no performance. Just her. She ordered peppermint tea and sat by the window, one hand resting on her belly as she watched the street outside. Her sons were quiet this morning, calm, like they were waiting too. Min-jae walked in at exactly noon. He looked different, still polished, still commanding. But there was something raw in his expression, something vulnerable. He spotted her immediately and crossed the cafe in 3 long strides. "You came," he said, as if he hadn't been sure she would. "I said I would." He sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. 2 people who'd once known everything about one another and now felt like strangers. "You look good," Min-jae said finally. Amara raised an eyebrow. "I'm 6 months pregnant with triplets. I look exhausted." "You look beautiful." The words hung in the air between them. Amara looked away, her fingers tightening around her tea. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Pretend like this is something it's not." She met his eyes again. "You wanted to talk. So talk." Min-jae leaned back in his chair. His hands rested on the table, fingers interlaced, knuckles white with tension. "Why did you hide the pregnancy?" he asked. Amara had expected the question, but hearing it still made her chest tighten. "Because I needed to know," she said simply. "Know what?" "If you'd come looking for me." Her voice was steady, calm, but beneath it he could hear the wound. "If you'd realize what you'd lost. If any part of you would regret what you did." "And?" Min-jae's voice was rough. "Did I?" Amara's smile was sad. "No. You moved on. You found someone else. You told the world I was broken and then proved you didn't need me by getting married and starting a family. She's pregnant too," Min-jae said quietly. Amara nodded. "I know. How?" "Because I've been watching you, Min-jae. For 6 months. I've seen every move you've made, every lie you've told, every moment you chose her over the truth." Min-jae flinched. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Amara interrupted. "You were embarrassed, humiliated. You needed someone to blame for the fact that we couldn't have children. And I was the easiest target. That's not..." "It is." Her voice sharpened. "You didn't fight for me. You didn't question the doctors. You didn't try. You just gave up. And then you made sure everyone knew it was my fault." Min-jae's jaw clenched. "I thought it was true. And now you know it wasn't." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. "What do you want from me, Amara?" Min-jae asked finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you want me to apologize? To beg? To destroy my life for yours?" Amara leaned forward. Her eyes locked onto his with the kind of intensity that made the world around them disappear. "I want you to feel what I felt," she said. "I want you to know what it's like to love someone with everything you have and watch them throw it away because it wasn't enough. I want you to carry the weight of losing 3 children you'll never get to raise because you chose pride over truth." Min-jae's breath hitched. "I'm not asking you to leave your wife," Amara continued. "I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm telling you that you already made your choice. And these 3, she placed both hands on her belly, are mine, not yours. You gave up that right when you walked away." "No." Min-jae's voice cracked. "You can't." "I can. And I will." She stood, slowly, carefully. Her belly brushed the edge of the table as she moved, and for a moment, Min-jae looked like he wanted to reach for her, to stop her, to rewrite everything that had brought them to this moment. But he didn't, because he knew she was right. Amara walked to the door, stopped, looked back. "I didn't come here for closure, Min-jae," she said softly. "I came here to show you what you lost, and to make sure you never forget it." And then she left. The bell above the door chimed softly as it closed behind her. Min-jae sat alone at the table, his world collapsing for the second time in 24 hours, with no idea how to stop the fall. Min-jae's wife left him 3 days after the meeting. She didn't scream, didn't throw things, didn't demand explanations he couldn't give. She simply packed her bags, called her father, and walked out of the penthouse with the kind of quiet dignity that made guilt taste like iron in his mouth. "I won't raise my child in the shadow of yours," she'd said at the door, one hand on her small belly, her eyes dry but devastated. "You made me a fool, Min-jae," in front of everyone. He'd tried to stop her, tried to explain, but the words died in his throat because there was no explanation that didn't make him the villain. She was gone by sunset, and Min-jae was alone. The penthouse felt cavernous without her. Every room echoed with absence. He walked through it like a ghost, touching surfaces that used to mean something. Her coffee mug on the counter, a book she'd been reading, a pair of slippers by the bed, and felt nothing but the weight of his own choices crushing him from the inside out. His phone rang. Sio's name flashed on the screen. "Talk to me," Min-jae said, his voice flat. "She's at Mount Sinai," Sio said. "Emergency room. She went into early labor." Min-jae's heart stopped. "Amara?" "No, sir, your wife." The world tilted. Min-jae grabbed his keys and was out the door before Seo finished speaking. He arrived at the hospital 20 minutes later, moving through the sterile hallways like a man possessed. The nurse at the desk directed him to the maternity ward, and he found his wife's father standing outside a private room, arms crossed, face carved from stone. "You have some nerve showing up here," the older man said coldly. "Where is she?" "Resting." The doctor stopped the contractions. "She's stable, for now." Min-jae exhaled. "Can I see her?" "She doesn't want to see you." "Please." His father-in-law stepped closer, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You humiliated my daughter. You brought your pregnant mistress into a room full of men and let her destroy everything we built. And now you want to walk in there and pretend you care?" "She's my wife," Min-jae said quietly. "The child is mine." "Is it?" The question was a blade. "Because from where I'm standing, you seem to have forgotten that the moment your past showed up." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "I didn't know. You didn't care." The older man's eyes blazed. "You wanted a fresh start, a clean narrative, and my daughter gave you that. But the second the truth came back to haunt you, you abandoned her just like you abandoned that other woman." The words hit like a fist, because they were true. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Min-jae said, his voice rough. "I just want to make sure she's okay." His father-in-law stared at him for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "5 minutes. And if you upset her, I'll have you thrown out." Min-jae nodded and pushed open the door. His wife lay in the hospital bed, her face pale, her hands resting protectively over her belly. She looked small, fragile. Nothing like the confident woman he'd married. "You came," she said quietly, not looking at him. "Of course I came." "Why?" She turned her head, and he saw the tears she'd been holding back. "So you can feel less guilty. So you can tell yourself you did the right thing?" Min-jae crossed the room slowly. He stopped at the edge of the bed, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders heavy. "I'm sorry," he said. She laughed bitterly. "You keep saying that. But it doesn't change anything, does it?" "No, it doesn't." Silence settled between them like fog. "The baby's okay," she said after a moment. "They said it was stress-induced. That if I rest, we should be fine. I'm glad." She looked at him then. Really looked at him. And for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that wasn't anger or hurt. It was pity. "You love her," she said softly. Min-jae's throat tightened. "It's complicated." "No, it's not." His wife sat up slowly, wincing. "You love her. You've always loved her. I was just convenient. The proof that you could move on, that you didn't need her." "That's not..." "It is." Her voice was steady now, certain. And the worst part is, I knew. Somewhere deep down, I knew. But I convinced myself that if I was good enough, patient enough, perfect enough, you'd eventually feel for me what you felt for her. She wiped her eyes. I was wrong. Min-jae sank into the chair beside the bed. He felt hollowed out. Empty. What do you want me to do? He asked. I want you to let me go. The words landed like a death sentence. I'm not asking you to abandon this child, she continued. I'm asking you to stop pretending we have a future. Because we don't. Not like this. Min-jae closed his eyes. You deserve better. I know. She smiled sadly. And so does she. He looked up sharply. His wife's expression was soft, understanding. Go to her, Min-jae, before it's too late, before you lose all three of them the way you're losing me. Amara was in her hotel suite when the knock came. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her sister wasn't due to visit until next week. Her lawyer had already sent over the custody documents. And Min-jae. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway, disheveled and exhausted, his tie gone, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. What are you doing here? Amara asked. I need to talk to you. We already talked. Please. His voice cracked. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Amara hesitated. Every instinct told her to slam the door in his face, to protect herself, to protect her sons. But something in his expression stopped her. She stepped aside. Min-jae walked into the suite slowly, taking in the space. The half-packed suitcase on the bed, the baby books on the nightstand, the sonogram photos taped to the mirror. You're leaving, he said. Why would I stay? He turned to face her. My wife left me. 3 days ago. Amara's breath caught. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was right to leave. I was using her. Using the pregnancy to prove something that was never true. He took a step closer. I've spent the last 6 months lying to myself, Min-jae said. Telling myself I made the right choice, that you were the problem, that I deserved better. But the truth is, I was terrified. Of what? Of failing you. His voice broke. Of not being enough. Of watching you suffer every month when the treatments didn't work, and knowing I couldn't fix it. So I blamed you instead. And I've hated myself for it every day since. Amara's hands trembled. That doesn't change what you did. I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me try to be the man you deserved the first time. He dropped to his knees, not in performance, not in manipulation, but in surrender. I want to be their father, he whispered, his eyes on her belly. I want to know them, to raise them, to give them everything I should have given you. Amara's heart fractured. And if I say no? Min-jae looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. Then I'll live with that. But please, don't take them away because I was too much of a coward to fight for you when it mattered. Amara closed her eyes. One of her sons kicked, hard, right beneath her ribs, like he was weighing in on the decision. Get up, she said quietly. Min-jae stood. She walked to the window, her back to him, one hand on her belly. I'm not doing this for you, she said. I'm doing it for them. Because they deserve to know their father, even if he's flawed, even if he broke me. She turned to face him. But if you hurt them, if you walk away again, I will make sure you never see them again. Do you understand? Min-jae nodded. I understand. Amara took a shaky breath. One chance, Min-jae. That's all you get. And for the first time in 6 months, something that felt like hope flickered between them. The next 3 weeks changed everything. Min-jae didn't move back into Amara's life. He earned his way back. Slowly, carefully, like a man learning to walk on broken glass. He showed up at her prenatal appointments, sat quietly in the corner while the doctor measured her belly and listened to 3 rapid heartbeats. He asked permission before speaking, before touching, before existing in her space. And Amara watched. She watched him fumble with baby books he didn't understand. Watched him research triple strollers and car seats with the same intensity he used to negotiate territory deals. Watched him sit beside her on the couch at night, his hand hovering near her belly, waiting for permission to feel his son's move. She gave it, not because she'd forgiven him, but because every time one of those tiny lives kicked against his palm, she saw something in his eyes that looked like wonder, like redemption, like a man discovering what love actually meant. "They're strong," Min-jae said one evening, his hand pressed against the left side of her belly where one of the triplets liked to stretch. "I can feel him pushing." "That's Kai," Amara said softly. "At least that's what I've been calling him. He's the fighter." Min-jae's eyes lifted to hers. "You named them?" "Not officially. Just in my head, so I could tell them apart." She guided his hand to the right side. "That's Elijah. He's the quiet one. And in the middle," she pressed his palm just below her ribs, "is River. He's always moving." Min-jae's throat worked. "Kai, Elijah, River. Do you hate them?" "I love them." The words were so simple, so honest, and so devastating. Amara pulled his hand away and stood, moving to the window. The city stretched below, glittering and indifferent. "Your wife's baby is due in 3 months," she said quietly. Min-jae stiffened. "I know. Will you be there?" "She doesn't want me there." "That's not what I asked." Min-jae stood and crossed the room. He stopped beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, but far enough to respect the boundaries she'd set. "I'll provide for the child," he said. "Financially. Legally. But she's made it clear she doesn't want me in her life, and I won't force my way into a space where I'm not wanted." "Not again." Amara's reflection in the window looked tired. "You're going to be a father to 4 children, by 2 different women. How are you going to manage that?" "I don't know," Min-jae admitted, "but I'm going to try." She turned to face him. "What if I leave? What if I take them and go somewhere you can't find us?" "Are you going to?" Amara searched his face, looking for doubt, for fear, for the man who'd abandoned her 6 months ago. But all she saw was certainty. "No," she said finally. "I'm not." Relief flooded his expression. "But I need you to understand something," Amara continued. "I'm not doing this because I've forgiven you. I'm doing it because these 3, she placed both hands on her belly, deserve more than what we had. They deserve a father who shows up, who chooses them, who doesn't run when things get hard." "I won't run," Min-jae said. "Not from them, not from you." "Prove it." 2 weeks later, Amara went into labor. It was early, too early. She was only 34 weeks, and the doctors had warned her that triplets rarely made it to full term. But when the contractions started at 3 a.m., sharp and relentless, she knew there was no stopping it. Min-jae was at her side within 20 minutes. He drove her to the hospital, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping hers as she breathed through the pain. He didn't speak, didn't panic. He just held her hand and drove like their lives depended on it. The delivery room was chaos. 3 teams of doctors, monitors beeping, voices overlapping. Amara's world narrowed to the pain, and Min-jae's voice in her ear, steady and unbroken. "You can do this. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." And he wasn't. He stayed through every contraction, every scream, every moment she thought she couldn't survive. And then, a cry. Small, fragile, beautiful. "It's a boy," the doctor announced. "Kai." 2 minutes later, another cry. "Elijah." And 3 minutes after that, the smallest sound of all. "River." Amara collapsed against the pillows, her body shaking, her vision blurred with tears. Min-jae's hand was still in hers, and when she turned to look at him, she saw tears streaming down his face. "They're here," he whispered. All three of them. A nurse brought Kai to her first. Tiny. Perfect. His eyes barely open, his fists curled against his chest. Amara held him, and the world stopped. Hi, baby, she whispered. I'm your mama. Min-jae leaned over her shoulder, his hand trembling as he touched Kai's head. The baby's fingers wrapped around his thumb. And Min-jae broke. He pressed his forehead against Amara's shoulder and wept. For the life he'd almost lost. For the family he'd almost destroyed. For the 3 tiny miracles he didn't deserve but would spend the rest of his life protecting. Thank you, he whispered against her skin. Thank you for giving me this, for giving me them. Amara closed her eyes. She didn't say she forgave him, but she didn't push him away either. And for now, that was enough. 6 months later. The brownstone in Brooklyn was nothing like Min-jae's penthouse. It was smaller, warmer, filled with the kind of chaos that came with 3 6-month-old boys who'd decided sleep was optional. But as Min-jae stood in the kitchen at 2 a.m., warming bottles while Kai screamed in the nursery and River fussed in the bassinet beside him, he couldn't remember ever feeling more at peace. Trade you, Amara said, appearing in the doorway with Elijah draped over her shoulder, half asleep and drooling. Min-jae handed her River's bottle and took Elijah, settling the baby against his chest. The little boy sighed and nuzzled closer, and Min-jae felt his heart expand in ways he didn't know were possible. Kai's still screaming, Amara said, testing the bottle temperature on her wrist. I'll get him after I feed this one. She smiled, tired. Beautiful. You're getting good at this. I have a good teacher. Amara rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She settled into the rocking chair with River, and Min-jae sat on the couch with Elijah. For a moment, the only sounds were the soft sucking of bottles and Kai's distant protests from upstairs. I got a call from my lawyer today, Amara said quietly. Min-jae looked up. About your ex-wife. She had the baby, a girl. Min-jae's expression softened. Is she okay? The baby? Both healthy. She wanted you to know that she doesn't expect anything from you. But if you want to be part of the baby's life, she's open to it. On her terms. Min-jae was quiet for a long time. Elijah finished his bottle, and Min-jae lifted him to his shoulder, patting his back gently until a small burp emerged. What do you think I should do? He asked. Amara met his eyes. I think you should be there. Not as her husband, not as her partner, but as that little girl's father. Because she deserves to know you, just like these 3 do. And you're okay with that? Amara shifted River to her other arm. I'm not threatened by your past, Min-jae. Not anymore. You've proven where you want to be. Every single day for the last 6 months. But that doesn't mean you get to abandon another child. Even if the circumstances are complicated. Min-jae stood and crossed to her. He knelt beside the rocking chair, careful not to wake the babies. How did I get so lucky? He asked. Amara's smile was soft. You didn't. You just finally stopped running and started fighting for what mattered. He leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Then to River's. Then to Elijah's. I love you, he whispered. Amara's breath caught. It was the first time he'd said it since she'd come back. I know, she said quietly. But you're going to have to keep proving it. Every day for the rest of my life. She reached out and cupped his face. Then we have a deal. Kai's screams intensified from upstairs. Min-jae laughed and stood. I'll get him. Bring him down. We'll feed all 3 together. He disappeared up the stairs and returned moments later with Kai, who stopped crying the second he was in his father's arms. Min-jae grabbed the last bottle and settled back onto the couch. And there they sat. Amara in the rocking chair with River. Min-jae on the couch with Kai and Elijah sprawled across his lap. 3 bottles, 3 babies. 2 people who'd destroyed each other and somehow found their way back. This is my empire now, Min-jae said softly, looking at his sons. Not territory, not power, just them. And you. Amara's eyes glistened. Best empire I've ever seen. Kai yawned, his tiny fist curling around Minjae's finger. River cooed softly in Amara's arms. Elijah slept, oblivious to the world. And for the first time in a year, everything felt right. 3 years later, the backyard was filled with balloons, streamers, and 3 toddlers covered in cake frosting. Kai, Elijah, and River ran through the grass in matching superhero capes, their laughter echoing off the brownstone walls. Minjae chased after them, roaring like a dragon while they shrieked with delight. Amara stood on the porch, one hand on her very pregnant belly, watching the chaos with a smile. "You're supposed to be resting," her sister said, appearing beside her with a plate of cake. "I am resting. I'm standing still. That's not what resting means." Amara laughed and took the plate. "I'll rest when the boys go to bed." "Which is never." "Exactly." Her sister looked out at the yard, where Minjae had scooped all 3 boys into his arms and was spinning them in circles. "He's good with them." "He is." "And baby number 4? Amara's hand moved to her belly. "A girl, due in 2 months. Does she have a name?" "Hope." Her sister smiled. "Perfect." Minjae caught Amara's eye from across the yard and grinned. He set the boys down and jogged over, slightly out of breath, his hair sticking up in 3 different directions. "They want you to come play dragons," he said. "I'm 8 months pregnant. I can't play dragons. You can be the princess in the tower." Amara raised an eyebrow. "And what are you?" "The reformed dragon who protects the kingdom." He leaned down and kissed her belly. "And the princess." "Smooth." "I try." Kai ran up and grabbed his father's hand. "Daddy, come on." Minjae laughed and let himself be dragged back toward the chaos. But he paused at the edge of the porch and looked back at Amara. "I love you," he said. She smiled. "I know. Now go save the kingdom." And he did. Because this, the brownstone, the boys, the woman on the porch carrying his daughter, the life they'd built from the ruins of who they used to be, this was his kingdom now, and he would protect it with everything he had. Forever.
You have 2 options. Keep watching short clips. Unlock the full story now. 14 full episodes. New content every week. Listen anytime, anywhere, no interruptions. Exclusive members-only area. Choose the story theme once a week. Scan the QR code now. Access is closing.